People are waiting, and people are like, "What the hell's taking you guys so long?" It's called catching up. Okay, let's do this thing in 3, 2, 1. Did the Cowboys screw up this deal with Dak Prescott, or is Jerry Jones kind of hinting, without knowing it, of the big mammoth TV deal that is coming in the National Football League? It's news and notes, March 10th, Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom. And Bloom, we got to start with that Dak Prescott deal, because as we go through all the tags, all the non-tags, we'll get to all the guys you want to talk about, Chris Godwin and Aaron Jones and Kenny Gallaudet and everybody. But it starts with the Cowboys finally getting it right?
Yeah.
Question mark with Dak Prescott?
Yes. There's so much I want to say. We could probably spend the whole half hour on this, Cease. First, I want to say I'm so happy that Dak Prescott and his camp won for betting on themselves.
Yes.
That they won. And Jerry lost. I mean, Jerry won in a way that he got his franchise quarterback with a 4th-round pick. I mean, still, Jerry won in the big picture. But could have signed him 2 years ago. The level would have been, I don't know, 25, 30 million, somewhere in there a year. Last year probably was in like 30 or 35 million.
Right.
Now you're going to pay 40. And look at all the little things, Cease. Look at the little things. Dak Prescott officially had the franchise tag applied to him this year. That was part of what happened. So that
he couldn't have it.
We get everything we want. We get everything we want, said Dak Prescott's camp. And Jerry said, yeah, you get everything you want. So it's good. It's good for Dallas. It's good for the offense. Obviously, you look at the Cowboys now as a quite interesting team, because they were at that fork in the road where they chose the wrong arm each of the last 2 years, but they chose the right one. So it's exciting, and Cease, it's part of just a wave of things happening around the league that remind us of what's going to happen going forward. And like you said, the TV deal. So let's go. I'm really cheap. I'm really, really cheap. Like, I'll probably look back, Cease, on my life and think if I would have been a little bit looser about spending money, I would have enjoyed my life so much more. It's almost like a psychological thing. I'm on the couch. But you're right that we should be optimistic about the future, even if the future isn't as optimistic as we picture. So the NFL owners absolutely are going to think of a cap that's going up, up, up. And now we have this new art of voidable years. Isn't this great? You can just put all the money in a signing bonus and put it out as a 5-year contract, spread it out. So, by the time, I mean, this is what restructures are about, right? Is you're taking the money that's kind of laid out level at the beginning of a contract, like the contracts we're going to hear announced in a few days. And then by the end of the contract, it's this hill, because you keep pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. So teams are going to do that. Teams are going to be optimistic. The salary cap is a myth. Is that where we're going to go with this?
Pretty much.
But when you have this growth, Cease, it is a myth. Like, as long as the owners can keep thinking, well, we're going to keep getting more and more money some point in the future, then it is a myth.
It's like printing their own money.
Yeah.
So, okay, Dak Prescott deal done. We still wait on Deshaun Watson. You always play the hits. It's an old radio term, right? Play the hits. Deshaun Watson, this might go till August, dude. I think anyone that's out there, and if it's Carolina, perhaps dangling Christian McCaffrey. If it's the Broncos, perhaps dangling the entire team. Like, you might have your plan in place. You might draft. You might have your mini camps and your OTAs, if that's allowed, and be in training camp when the Texans finally give. Isn't that what happened with Jimmy Garoppolo? Because Belichick was like, no, and then finally called up John Lynch, was like, yeah. And, this Deshaun Watson thing, the Dak Prescott thing is done. That saga is done, right? And I think the Dak Prescott deal also reflects what we're seeing, the change in the NFL, which most owners probably don't like, where players are going to get to call their shots. It's like Jerry was giving Dak stuff just to be like, and you're not going to call your own shot later, right? Yeah. Right, buddy? So that's what Jerry was doing. I think it's reflecting what guys like Deshaun Watson are now doing, and Russell Wilson trying to do in terms of getting out. But as far as the Watson thing, we'll be talking about that maybe up until August.
Or beyond. So what's substantive? I've been saying this when I've been talking to folks, East, that, the Deshaun Watson story is so big, and the Russell Wilson story, that every day we'll have an update, even if the update is there's no update. You know, I mean, just it's that big of a deal. And I think the latest thing in the Watson situation that caught my eye was John McClain saying it's time for the Texans to listen to offers. John McClain on January 7th said there's as much chance of Deshaun Watson getting traded as there is of me being the next head coach of the Houston Texans.
Right.
So that represents some movement. I mean, is McClain, speaking to a whole discussion here of beat writers that are the mouthpiece of teams or beat writers that have sources that are so entrenched that they're the closest to the actual true source, or maybe they really are one step removed from the source. John McClain is one of those things, or something like that for the Texans.
He might be both.
Yes. But is this John McClain saying, I'm getting tired of this, and actually even maybe trying to communicate with the organization through the media? Or is it John McClain being part of a team-led media campaign to get the fans ready for this? You know, even the negativity that's been out there about Watson could be part of that. It's hard to say. We could put the same kind of analysis on the Russell Wilson situation, because Russell Wilson indeed communicated with the organization through the media. It's all a sign of dysfunction. Okay, It's all a sign of things like Mike Silver said. And look, you can look at Mike Silver as a reliable or unreliable reporter, but if Mike Silver tries to describe context, you should pay attention. He said, hey, whenever an agent's saying we don't demand a trade, but we're putting 4 teams out there in case you want to trade us, that's not normal. That doesn't mean everything's okay and everything's going to be okay. That usually doesn't mean that. And in this Watson situation, Cease, I think we have kind of what we get to with the CBA, right? I mean, let's face it, our living is tied to the NFL. So when there's a CBA, 2 times it's happened now that we've been part of this, Cease, you get nervous.
Oh, very nervous.
It's 2 groups of people that are not used to losing anything.
Right.
And I think that's where we're at. I think it's pretty clear that Watson has put enough out that he has to be prepared to sit out into, if not through the season. And I think it's pretty clear the Texans, Jack Easterby, I mean, can we just come out and say it? Easter Casario, whatever you want to call it. And Cal McNair in the background, like in the back seat saying, where are we going next? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That they don't want to lose. They don't want to show in any way that they are going to be bested within or outside of their organization. And so it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. It's like, who really is going to bend? Who is going to change the attitude, mindset, personality that got them to this point of an impasse? Like we saw in the first story, it was Jerry Jones. But Jerry Jones, I'm talking to Eric Stoner. I can't bring up Eric Stoner, I mean, Jerry's old. Jerry knows if he wants to win a Super Bowl, like he's got to go for it, Yeah. So in some ways, he did this happily, Casario and Easterby are not going to say yes happily to anything. I mean, that's really the biggest story is from the reality show standpoint, Cease. I mean, maybe if there was as much coverage of the NFL 30, 40, 50 years ago, we would have learned that there was an organization like this Texans organization. But it's just so fascinating.
Right.
It's tangential to other things going on in our society. And it's so public in a way that NFL organization, intra-organization, spats. Like we usually never get this kind of details and like real-time coverage of an organization kind of melting down
right in front of our eyes. And it's something you don't see. Something that maybe you shouldn't see is what's going on in Philadelphia, where Jeffrey Lurie is saying no competition, make Jalen Hurts this guy. Well, last time a team tried that, Bloom, it was last year with Drew Lock. How'd that work out? Right? Jeff Driscoll doesn't push anybody. You need someone to compete. And, it's Carson Wentz is gone. Jalen Hurts is the man. I talked to Davion Taylor last night. He was like, Jalen Hurts, we're super excited about him. Yeah. You should be. He's got to be a much better passer, though. And not pushing him, not making him earn the job. I don't know, Bloom. Is that the right move for the Eagles?
Here's the right move, and it's hard to do this. The right move is you evaluate. Let's not say Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's go number 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's. I mean, 80%, 90%, 95% going number 2.
I just laugh at all the people that finally caught on. Wilson's always been a stud.
Yeah.
People are like, hey, wait a second, guys. Hot take. Some teams like Zach Wilson more. It's like, yeah, they always have. This isn't anything new. This is Herbert or
Yeah.
Burrow last
Yeah.
year. Same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So chances are he's going number 2. So we're really talking about Justin Fields and Trey Lance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the right answer. Because you possess the number 6 pick, and because there's some reasonable chance that one or both of them will be there, you need to fully evaluate them and ask yourself, is this a franchise quarterback? And any time, with the exception of maybe like, where Arizona is or Kansas City, like we can make a list of teams that if they possess the number 6 pick, then we would say, okay, accept these teams. But if you evaluate that guy, you evaluate him not just through his tape and through interviews, but really ask yourself, is this somebody we want to hitch our franchise to? And you get a green light, then you have to take him. How many times do you get a chance to take a franchise quarterback in the draft? Very, very rarely. Most of the time you have to move up or be really bad. And you don't want to plan on being really bad enough that you have multiple opportunities to do that. So Philadelphia, if the green light goes on for either one of these guys, what a great problem to have. And again, we saw it to an extent. I always remember Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. D'Angelo Williams, after they take Jonathan Stewart, you really see the player that he could have become unlocked. Or even what Aaron Rodgers happened with Aaron Rodgers last year to an extent. So it's not a bad idea. You just have to evaluate Lance and Fields as if it doesn't matter who your quarterback is. And the elephant in the room, Cecil, is, should Miami be doing this? I would say yes. You're not giving up on Tua if you say we have a chance to get somebody that is a franchise quarterback, and what a nice problem to have if you have 2 franchise quarterbacks. And if the addition of one makes the other wilt, then they weren't going to be a franchise quarterback anyway. So I don't know if Philadelphia will do that. I do think that giving Hurts 1 year to see if he hits and then makes your roster so easy to manage because you have your starting quarterback on a rookie contract, which you would still get with the number 6 pick, but you give up this valuable asset you can give Rashawn Slater with number 6. That's a cornerstone for a team that needs that. So imagine Rashawn Slater with a Hurts that hits. Maybe that's the ideal scenario for them, and I think that's what they're going to be very inclined to do.
A Hurts that hits. I like it.
Yeah.
That's a new one. Hurts that hits. How about a hit from the UTEP two-step Aaron Jones, who, God bless Green Bay. We really want to keep him, but he's going to hit the open market, which means he's the best running back out there, and he's not coming back to Green Bay. He's going to price himself out of Green Bay. It sounds nice, and this is also part of the year because we didn't get a combine, right? So we didn't get the teams maybe giving a little bit more truth than they want to reveal. So we have to cut through this. Green Bay really wants him. They're not going to do anything to keep him. A.J. Dillon's going to be their lead back. Hell, they'll probably lose Jamal Williams too, Bloom. But let's talk about Aaron Jones not getting that tag and how his market should be quite robust.
Should be. Well, it's always with running back now, it's unpredictable. The league is wising up on paying a running back. That being said, there's always more cap room out there than talent, and Aaron Jones has a lot of talent. Unite Santini in the chat room said Aaron Jones to the Dolphins. Sure. I mean, actually, if you were saying who was the most likely team, that's a good pick as the favorite to get Aaron Jones. And, this is a team that Corey Linsley, their center, that's a decision they have to make. They may want to make a splash with a wide receiver or do something else to help Aaron Rodgers. So it makes sense in terms of allocating the room you have away from running back. Aaron Jones, they can say they want to. We can talk about Hunter Henry too, Cease. I mean, you can say you want the person to be back, but it ain't getting more likely. You're more likely to get the deal done when the franchise tag hangs over the situation. There's more leverage for the team.
Right.
Once a player gets that close to the market, it's over. And the only thing that can happen is they get such a chilly reception from the market that maybe they do come back and take something what you were offering before that. I think they have to keep Jamal Williams or sign James White or something. And maybe they won't, Cease, but isn't it organizational malpractice if you were in a Super Bowl window with Aaron Rodgers and you don't have an ace passing game back?
Right.
That's more important than A.J. Dillon. I mean, let's face it, we saw Dante Foreman last year. Dante Foreman could unlock the value of this running game in a way that you need to get to at least back to the NFC title game. A.J. Dillon isn't going to make that much of a difference for the outcome of this team. The passing game back is going to make a difference. And why not bring back Jamal Williams, the guy that knows the offense and that everyone knows in the locker room?
Everybody loves him.
So I hope to me is rational organizational management. We'll see if it happens.
Yeah, we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. And it makes sense. If you're going to let Jones go, then keep Williams around. What about the Chris Carson thing? Because, like, we really like Rashad Penny. Why? Like, okay, and Chris Carson's got his own injury woes, to be sure. But it seems like Seattle, some curious things going on up there, Bloom, including this handling of the Chris Carson situation, who's now going to hit free agency.
And we haven't really, again, delved into Russell Wilson. We can't talk about anything Seattle related without bringing up Russell Wilson. Right?
Yes.
Because that's the thing. Like, the house is in disarray right now. You know, depending on who you talk to, you know, Seattle's not inviting offers, but they're listening to offers. They're making calls, but it doesn't mean they're making the first call. They're just returning the call. If someone leaves a message. Really? I mean, this is where we're at with parsing. Where is this situation? Okay.
Pete Carroll wears a pager, doesn't he? He's that guy, right? He's
or
still
the cell phone that you carry around. It's like almost like a little briefcase.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Pete Carroll's obviously the central character in this, along with Russell Wilson. So the Chris Carson thing, look, both the Carson and Aaron Jones things baffled me a bit, because there's the franchise tag was like 11 million, transition tag like 8 or 9, like what the Cardinals did with Drake. That's pretty reasonable.
Hell, Melvin Gordon's getting 8 million a year.
Exactly. And 8 or 9 million isn't a lot in terms of what it can buy you at another position. You know, 8 or 9 million at another position isn't going to buy you a difference maker. So Aaron Jones is a difference maker. Chris Carson's a difference maker. Why would these teams not transition tag these backs? Especially because the Seahawks continue, Pete Carroll, continue to want to double down on the running game. You know, well, you don't have anybody who can harvest the value you're earning. You cannot count on Rashad Penny to stay on the field, period. We don't even need to get into is he good or not, which we don't know yet, because he can't stay on the field. So they have to do something, you would think. So this is the opposite of that Green Bay conversation, Cecil, where we're talking about a rational organization. A rational organization, if Seattle believed what they stated, like we're all about running the ball, how can you have right now the worst backfield in the NFL?
Yeah, you can't, or you shouldn't. And yes, the draft has plenty of backs that you could look to. Plenty of backs.
They traded the first round pick
all the way to the third round, all the way to the fourth round. But what is it? Here's what Seattle's doing, and it's weird that John Schneider is doing this. It's we're going to prove that we were right. Yeah. Even if we're wrong, we're still going to prove that we were right with Rashad Penny in the first round, which is always foolish. And then what's interesting about Russell Wilson, Bloom, it always goes back to the quarterback. They made so many players mad, and you could probably guess who those players are, because they treated Russell Wilson differently.
Yeah,
everything's a competition. Oh, except with Russell. Mm-hmm. And now the relationship is soured. When they initially soured everybody, especially those older guys, especially more of the outspoken and more of the better players, Marshawn, Richard Sherman, players like that. I'm sure, let's just guess, Bloom, they probably weren't really happy with the way Russell Wilson was treated differently than they were treated. And now Wilson is hinting at wanting out.
See, this comes back to the Malcolm Butler play who just got released. So, it's tied all together. Whether or not it has anything to do with what you're talking about, Russell Wilson being treated differently, there was a perception among some players, at least, that it was a reflection of that relationship. The play call, we can all travel back to that moment whenever Marshawn Lynch, for a second, you thought maybe he was going to win the game.
Win Super Bowl MVP.
Right. And then you're like, well, obviously they're going to give him to him on the next play, and he's going to get in. Like, it was inevitable. Mm-hmm. It was inevitable that Lynch was going to get that carry, score that touchdown. Seahawks were going to win. He was going to get MVP. Instead, they called that slant. Ricardo Lockett, Malcolm Butler. The rest truly is history. One of the all-time Super Bowl plays. The only reason it's not the all-time Super Bowl play is James Harrison, because that's the actual all-time Super Bowl play. That or John Riggins. It's tough, man. It's tough. So this relationship has never been healthy, as you point out, Cease. It's never been healthy. It's never been in a state where everybody was happy and it could just keep going on its own momentum. And that's how we got to this point. So, it's really fascinating, Cease, because in both of these stories, Wilson and Watson, like, mostly what we're talking about is the relationship between the organization and the player. And what's wild hanging over all this is that Carson Wentz, who was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year, and has never done anything approaching what Watson or Wilson have done. He actually got to determine his destiny. He got to go somewhere where he felt good, and he forced his way out. So we'll see.
We'll see. And it's interesting. Very few times in our own lives, and yet this one so very publicly. Imagine if they'd ran the ball. Seattle's got what, 3 more Super Bowls?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on to Kenyon Drake. And this was on writing on the wall. Who was it? Was it Kime? Somebody was talking about Chase Edmonds. He could be our guy. It was Kingsbury, right? Came across the news like Kingsbury's. He's all on Chase Edmonds' jock. Yeah, it's because they're going to let Kenyon Drake go, who caught lightning in a bottle when he joined the Cardinals. And then, more fizzle than sizzle last season. What kind of market is he going to receive?
Very lukewarm. See, let's play a game, okay? And I don't really know because you have Drake, you have Fournette. Okay, maybe Fournette because Fournette has that Super Bowl perfume on him. Like, okay, Fournette probably will get like a worse to Melvin Gordon deal. And for fantasy, we should probably pencil Gordon in to be the most valuable fantasy back wherever he lands. Now, he may not fulfill it, but he's going to be a winner. But some of these other guys beneath the Carson Jones level, like, how's the market going to receive James Conner? I don't know. I don't think positively.
No.
So I think that Drake is not even close to guaranteed to be a starter. It's not that Drake is a dud, but you're not going to be committing. So, see, when we look at what the good organizations are going to do in free agency, you're not going to commit beyond a year or maybe 2 just to stretch out the signing bonus to any player who's like over 27 or 28, right? I mean, so especially a running back.
Right.
I mean, Todd Gurley's out there. How's the market going to receive Gurley? Are we really going to see something where, like, come June or July, Gurley's not signed anywhere, like a Devontae Freeman kind of situation where he still thinks he should be a starter and the league's like, no, you're not. This is the nature of the running back position, I mean, you see players like, what's Gurley, 26? You see players dealing with the end of career kind of like, you're out of touch with reality, and it's a painful reality so early for these guys.
You're in your 20s and you're done.
Yeah. Not even your late 20s sometimes. And I think that, Drake's peaked as a player, and I think that he's not going to get signed right away. I think you're going to see very few running backs outside of Carson, Jones, and maybe Carson not right away. James White, I think everybody has him going back to Tampa. That one's pretty easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I say back to Tom in Tampa. But otherwise, it's a very unpredictable running back market, and I think you should bet the under, i.e., bet that these guys are going to be waiting longer, getting less money and less work than they want.
The running back position, always full of twists and turns. The latest in the Melvin Gordon situation is his DUI was dismissed. He pleaded guilty to reckless driving for excessive speeding. I don't think the NFL can suspend him for that, Bloom, so that means the void in his contract that would have happened had he been suspended, meaning the Broncos could have got rid of him. Looks like he might stay. They're going to tender Philip Lindsay, except that hasn't been revealed yet. It's going to be an original round tender. Ooh. And it just seems like, and that's me guessing. That's not any sort of inside information. I'm guessing that because why would you second round tender a guy that you don't want to use? Right. Pat Shurmur doesn't want to use Philip Lindsay. It was insulting. And go back and listen to my interview with Philip Lindsay from like 2 weeks ago. It was probably the best interview I've ever done. And he was just so forward with how are you going to say a guy can't catch when you don't throw him the ball? And I generally agree with that. So I think there's going to be an attraction for Lindsay out there for some teams, maybe more so than Denver. So you original round tender him, someone signs him away, and you go, oh, damn it, we wanted to keep him. And then you roll forward with Melvin Gordon, some rookie, Khalil Herbert, and then Royce Freeman trying to do something. So Melvin Gordon looks like he might be staying in Denver, even though maybe behind the scenes they wanted to move on if they could.
Yeah, the charge is being dropped. I don't know what kind of penalty suspension he'll get, if any, at all. I still think that he's a player on the decline. A player that we've seen his best football, and he did have some decent touchdown luck last year. He did have some injury luck, I mean, let's face it, a healthy Philip Lindsay is better than Melvin Gordon right now. And that is more about Lindsay than Gordon. But the real thing I want to dig in here, Cease, is the idea of original round tender. Because I think that there are probably some smart personnel people around the league that see that Denver just, like you say, like just doesn't like Philip Lindsay. And there's nothing that Lindsay can show on the field that's going to change their mind about him. Nothing. And Lindsay can be an important part of a winning team. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, he could be Austin Eckler.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's funny because I think I saw him associated with this team, but I can't remember who did it. But it makes sense. Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, a lot of sense. I'll say another one. Probably not going to happen, but imagine him on Kansas City.
Oh,
right. Imagine him on Green Bay. We talk about that passing back. We talk about explosion. We talk about intent between the tackles. You got A.J. Dillon, Philip Lindsay. Sounds pretty good. I know Baltimore really, really liked him.
Yeah.
Don't know if that still stands today with Dobbins there. Obviously, Ingram moved on. So, yeah, be ready to lose him, Broncos country.
And if he's there, I still would like him better than Melvin Gordon at cost. Like if Gordon costs a 5th or 6th round pick and Lindsay's a 10th round pick, give me Lindsay and let's see what happens.
Yeah. Wide receiver position. Let's see what happens here, dude. Okay, Chris Godwin tagged, maybe not out of the ordinary, maybe a little bit surprising because Levante David gets an extension and Shaq Barrett gets bumpkus so far. He wants to stay. I talked to Shaq 2 weeks ago. And it sounds like he doesn't want to come back to Denver. I'll say that for various reasons. But like that, the Godwin thing's interesting because there's only so much money and they chose Godwin and they chose Levante.
Yeah.
They haven't yet chosen Shaq, which is interesting.
It is, and they may lose him because of it. But
Yes.
These are the hard choices you have to make when you win a Super Bowl. Yeah. I mean, it's a good edge class. If they keep Barrett, it's because it's a really good edge class. If you're shopping for anything in this free agent class, edge is the position, which is strange because it's usually the toughest position to find. It's the one people overpay for in the draft. They overpay for in free agency. There is a plethora of players. But Barrett's looking for $20 million. I hope he gets it. He may still end up back with Tampa, which kind of makes sense in a let's keep the band together kind of way. Godwin, they couldn't get the deal done, which I think just keeps at least a pulse for Tyler Johnson, who showed the skills that made people love him in Minnesota. He could be the number one slot in Tampa in a Bruce Arians offense next year in 2022.
Yes.
Because they didn't get this long-term deal done. But you're right, Cease. They had an incentive to get that deal done because if they get the deal done before the franchise tag, then they can tag Barrett. I think they were always going to keep David. David's like 30, 31. Again, Cease, I think that age is in the free agent conversation more than ever in the sense of who you're committing to for a long number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that David was going to have a big, big market. And maybe he took less than he would have gotten elsewhere. But, obviously the fit in Tampa for him is perfect. But I also want to toss out there, though, that Emmanuel Sanders just got released. So, we're in that, there's the franchise tag deadline. There's this cap announced this morning, 182.5. And now we're going to get to, you have a week to get under the cap. It's limbo time, Cease.
Yep.
How low can you go?
It's non-tampering, whatever. It's close enough. So how low can you go? And now that we know that number, that's a little bit higher than some people expected. What's that mean for your team? Allen Robinson gets tagged, which isn't surprising to me, Bloom. I just want to know who's going to throw him the rock. And if Russell Wilson picks 4 teams and the Bears are on one of them, it's like the other teams that were on Russell Wilson's list. I don't have a list, but if I were to have a list, it would be New Orleans and the Raiders and the Bears. It's like, the Bears, Russell Wilson throwing Allen Robinson. Kind of like the sound of that. So Robinson gets tagged, but who the hell knows throwing him the rock? And that's what makes it maybe less exciting than a Godwin or a guy we're going to talk about, Gallaudet, here in a little bit.
Yeah, I think with Allen Robinson, it was predictable. It's a desperate GM and head coach. Anytime you have anybody who knows that this could be their last year and you give them the power to dispatch resources, they're going to spend for this year. So I understand why Robinson won't sign a long-term deal, but I also understand why Pace and Nagy have to tag him. Russell Wilson, I mean, the Bears it should be like an NBA-style deal, Cease. like 6 first-round picks or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you get our first-round pick for every year that Russell Wilson, we still have a winning record with him. Or, get creative. You know what I mean? Like, make it worth Seattle's while if you have a chance to do it. Otherwise, I mean, we're probably looking at what, Mitchell Trubisky? I think this is sad, right? Alex Smith. I mean, I think that's possible. I imagine he loves Alex Smith. I think that's possible. That's what you're looking at if you can't bring in the big fish.
And Alex Smith versus Nick Foles competition.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is where we're at. But really, it just signifies that sad feeling, right? Because, I mean, this is one where the franchise tag is one that makes you go, oh, if you're on Robinson, and you were looking for him to play with a better quarterback on a better team, which is why we talked about this with Dak Prescott. Remember, Trent Williams, most valuable free agencies, most valuable free agent, regardless of position, Trent Williams.
Yeah.
He got no tag in his contract with San Francisco. And I think Allen Robinson's signed for anybody signing a contract next week. Get that no tag clause. That's important. More important than a no trade clause.
Get that no tag clause. You mentioned the NBA. I think we're going to see guys try to super team it a little bit. So, your veteran guys like, I'll take less money because I can go to Kansas City or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we'll continue to watch that as we go through the guys that were tagged, that weren't tagged. One of them that wasn't tagged was Kenny Gallaudet. Okay, that's interesting because you thought maybe they're losing Marvin Jones Jr., lost Danny Amendola. It's like now no Kenny Gallaudet. What, Terrell Williams is their number one receiver?
Yeah, well, they're just trying to be competitive. Look, Brad Holmes, I think, has a plan, and they have to do some cap gymnastics just to be able to field a team this year, basically. And that's what they're going to do. A lot of moves that hurt from the Patricia Quinn era. This is the right move, unless they wanted to get embroiled in a tag and trade market for Kenny Gallaudet. Again, age. He's like 28. You're probably paying for like the last bit of his prime and then the beginning of his decline. You're paying top dollar for that on a team that isn't going to compete this year. And if anything, they just need to preserve cap room in the next 2, 3, 4 years to build the team that Brad Holmes wants to build. So I think this was the right move, even though they're only going to get a comp third. Gallaudet will set the market at wide receiver. Likely, he or Juju will set the market. I think, immediately, Jets, Giants. Immediately. As soon as I saw he wasn't Cab, my brain goes, Jets, Giants. A lot of people will say Colts, but that's not Chris Ballard's style. Chris Ballard does not set the market at any position. Chris Ballard's going to wait in the weeds and get Nelson Aguilar in the second wave for like 2 years, $15 million or something.
Right.
So Jets,
Where's
Giants.
Jacksonville in this conversation? Just because of their money situation.
Sure, they have a lot of money. Well, sure, Jacksonville, Miami. Of course, you're going to include Jacksonville, Miami in these conversations too. So, you start asking yourself, you don't just love Gallaudet with Tua. Gallaudet with Lawrence would be great. Gallaudet with Daniel Jones, actually not bad if Jason Garrett gets out of the way. Gallaudet with Zach Wilson, let's just cut to the chase, Jets. I mean, Gallaudet with Zach Wilson, that could work. Or, hey, Darnold he knew what to do with Robbie Anderson downfield, So we'll see what's next for Gallaudet, but it's the right move for the Lions where they're at. And what Gallaudet has to offer with Jared Goff, that's the other thing. Jared Goff is not Matthew Stafford. He's not going to give Gallaudet a lot of chances to win 50-50 balls. It's just not a good marriage in terms of style. So that's all for the best that this happened. And I applaud Brad Holmes just by saying, this is the right move for us, even though some people will say we made the wrong move.
Before we get to the tight ends, and speaking of bad marriage, Bloom, Juju Smith-Schuster, no tag, no kidding.
Yeah.
One, they don't have any money. Two, Ben coming back ruins the Steelers again, and them going to Mason Rudolph, don't get us started on the Steelers. So no Juju, yeah, that's fine. They got Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, and James Washington's no slappy.
No, the Steelers are going to be fine. I mean, even if they had the money, Juju should go out and get his, and he's young. He's, for a player getting a second contract, young. We'll see where he ends up. I think that you're going to see that he has more left than what he looked like he had in that limited offense last year. Can't really evaluate what he did in 2019 because of the quarterbacks, because he was banged up. So you go back to 2018, was when people would have said he's one of the 5 most valuable receivers in the league when you look at his age and how good he possibly could become. Maybe he gets back on that track in a new organization. I think it's potentially a buy low moment, both for him in a fantasy perspective, but also in the league. We may watch him in his new spot, especially if he has another really good receiver he's playing with, and say, wow, they got a value.
Tight ends, 3 of them really to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And first and foremost, you want to keep someone. This goes back to our Philip Lindsay conversation. You put a second round tender on him. We really want to keep him, original round tender. The Packers are probably going to put a second round tender on Robert Tonyan. Why, Bloom? Because they really want to keep him. So that Hunter Henry, no tag. Jonnu Smith, no tag. Henry's interesting because they have Donald Parham. You go, okay. Yeah. Tennessee, you go, huh? I thought Smith could be part of their future, but I guess not. So let's talk about these tight ends to tie a bow on today's show.
Yeah. With the Henry situation, and I get it, Daniel Popper, who does good work, I think Athletic, and I go back and forth with him about, hey, the Chargers still really want to keep Henry. Okay. But their ability to sign him to a long-term deal went down when the tag deadline passed. Because for Henry, the tag loomed, and maybe he just never knew. Look, if the team came out and said, we're not going to tag you, and he knows that, and he knows that the actual negotiation period is going right up to the legal tampering period, then maybe it doesn't change the outlook at all. But it's not positive. It's not positive when you're trying to get someone done a long-term deal and you let the tag deadline pass and you don't use the tag. The other thing looming, by the way, is Mike Williams and his $15 million year deal this year, the 5th-year option. And it's the last year where they could say, nah, and cut him and not be on the hook. So that's a lot. 15 million is a lot for Mike Williams. So maybe the idea is they can't carry Williams 15 and Henry's 13 on the cap at the same time. But if they can get something done with Henry that lowers his number this year, then they can keep Henry and Williams. But look, bottom line for me, Cecil, is I don't think Henry moves the needle. Like, I get it. He's a good run blocker. I get it. He's a functional pass receiver. He's not a dynamic player. You can find Hunter Henrys in the draft. Tommy Tremble. You can find Hunter Henrys in the draft. You don't need to set the market and pay him like 4 years, 45 or 50 million at tight end. I think Colts now this is an interesting one where I actually would see the Colts, the Jags,
the Bills
are
saying they're being very public about how they want to upgrade tight end.
And Zach Ertz, and will he get released? That's in the background here. We saw like some sign that Howie Roseman was trying to create a market. Oh, there's offers and there's interest. But now we're mostly hearing about, Ertz would rather be cut, and probably, they want to carry that contract to the beginning of the league year. So that's the other thing that's looming. I think if it is Donald Parham, with Justin Herbert, with the speed, with the size, with what he saw at the end of the year, I think they're better off going forward with that. But I do think the Chargers, this is one of the more likely players who didn't get tagged to still end up with the team that didn't tag him.
It is the Audible. It's footballguys.com. Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom talking about everything that's going on in the National Football League. Bloom, we always got stuff coming up with the Audible, so everyone just stay tuned. Stay tuned for announcements.
Yeah.
Big news.
And the NFL also will continue to, yesterday was a day where there's just a lot of adrenaline, a lot of like, okay, stuff's happening. Things are moving, and it's already been a good offseason for that, and we're going to be here for all of it.
We're going to be here with you talking about it. We appreciate you doing all those YouTube things, like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid. You love the Audible? Well, help us grow the channel. Do all those YouTube things like I said. Thanks for listening on iTunes, on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever it's called now. And we appreciate each and every one of you. He's Sigmund, I'm Cecil. Everyone stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.